From the interconfines of Longmont Church of Christ, I'd like to bring you today's lesson on Luke chapter 10. Now, we are sitting in my office and having an opportunity to record the Bible lesson today for Wednesday night. We have been slowly purchasing additional equipment, and so today we are trying out for the first time a couple of different pieces of equipment. One is our shotgun mic that's attached to the camera, and then we also have some additional lighting so that we can bring brightness to the scene, and hopefully we'll have good sound and we'll be able to move forward with some of our recordings. This new nature of how we are delivering lessons is not, of course, something that the ministry staff here is very comfortable with. I have said over and over to our staff, we are not a production company. We are a church, and we are a ministry staff that really does believe in relationship and in relationship building, and that church is all about people and all about our communion with one another as God's community. And so these lessons are a little bit difficult. I don't know if you noticed, Sunday, Devin and I were recording in the back as Jimmy spoke this last Sunday's lesson, and I knew before, that was the first time Jimmy had ever done that in front of an empty auditorium, and so I knew at the end that he would be telling us that it was a little bit uncomfortable, and sure enough, when he finished, he was mentioning, wow, there's just not, it's so dead. There's no people. There's nobody looking at you. There's no feedback. And so this is not the way ministry can be done long term, staring at a camera, right? And so if you're watching this, thanks for watching. And I want you to know that you are important, and that God is in control, and that God loves you, and I am extremely grateful for you. I miss having an opportunity to sit in a Bible class or stand in front of a Bible class and present the Bible and hear from other people, other members, their take on Scripture. It's such a vital part of what we're doing, and so I know this does not replace that in any shape, form, or fashion, but we'll give it our best shot, and we want to have the equipment and technology that's available for us to do so. And so it still really boils down to I'm missing the community, and I know you are too. And Sheila and I, being folks that are not on Facebook, Zoom, Skype, all the other ways that we communicate with others, which we are doing quite frequently, of course, as well as with our own family members across the world, it's still not the same. And so Sheila and I, we were of course with our little grandbaby Aspen just a few weeks ago, and we would love to give her a hug. And so I know that is so true for all of us as we think about being in relationship with one another. And so we're going to look at a particular text today, Luke chapter 10, that follows a discussion between Jesus and a lawyer. And so that's where we're going to begin here in a few minutes, starting in verse 25. But I just want to say up front, I am so grateful for you, and I believe in you as members of this church that Jesus is working. I believe Jesus is, of course, the Son of God, and the reality is that is the most important thing. That it's never been more true that when we are faced with situations like we have right now, that Jesus reigns and that He's what's most important. And so anytime we're apart and every time we're together, we want to make sure that when we speak, we're, of course, speaking about Christ. And so hopefully you're getting a chance to do so as you interact with others in your limited way through the internet and whatever ways we're able to see people as we move forward. But Jesus is a great thing to talk about, right? He's a great subject. And so Luke chapter 10, verse 25, we'll just get started into our study now. And so it begins like this: Behold, a certain lawyer stood up and put Jesus to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? I love the way Luke does this. He says, here in this incident in the life of Jesus, he says, there's this certain lawyer, like a certain lawyer, like not any, like not by name, right? We don't get any names. Jesus doesn't make a fool of this lawyer. He doesn't put this lawyer into a bad place. And Luke doesn't even tell us who it is. He just says, now there was a certain lawyer. And I like that because Jesus, of course, will use it later on when he says, and there was a certain man and a certain Samaritan. And so again, we don't get the name of the hero of the story here in a few minutes. We only get there was a certain Samaritan. And so Jesus is just simply telling us it's not any one individual and it's every individual. It's our story and it's not our story. It can be any particular person or not. It's like it's true for all of us, and yet we're not going to name names. And so Jesus is making this very personal by not telling us any particulars about the Samaritan. We don't know his story, where he came from, what he was doing, his career. We don't know the lawyer. We just know that whatever is said here is true for everyone. Because Jesus said a certain lawyer and a certain Samaritan, then we know it's true for everyone. All of us can do what Jesus said in this text. And so, and it's also true that, Jesus is not going to, when he talks about the Samaritan, who also is nameless, we know that this story is more about Jesus, about the Christ, than it is about putting all of us on a pedestal. And so, none of us need puffing up. And so as the story unfolds, it's not about the Samaritan. It is, but it isn't. It's about Jesus and the service to him that we provide as we serve others. And so all of us can do this. That's the story. And so let's go into the text now. Verse 26. So he said to him, what is written in the law? Well, back to the question. So the lawyer said, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And of course, Jesus said to him, well, what's written in your law? What's in the law? How does it read to you? And he said, well, you shall love the Lord your God, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. He quotes from Leviticus 19, actually, is the one that we will look at. But he quotes, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, Jesus said back to the lawyer, you've answered correctly. Do this and you will live. But wishing to justify himself, he said to Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? So this little interaction takes place. Jesus says, well, what's written in the law? And the lawyer says, well, I'm going to quote to you Leviticus 19. And Jesus says, well, that's good. That's right. And then he goes back one chapter and quotes from Leviticus 18. He says, well, that's what the law says, and so let me quote the law back. Do it and you'll live. And the lawyer, of course, can't stop there. It's not just you're right, it's I need more, like desiring to justify himself. This is the way I think this lawyer's really doing this. He's saying it can't be this simple. It just can't be this simple. It can't just be love God and love your neighbor. There's got to be more to it. This law, it's complex. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of things going on. So there's more to it than that. So if you really are who you are, give us some insights into this very complex matter. And Jesus is like, no, really, it really is this simple. Christianity is not complex. Christianity is not, I need a whole lifetime to discover. I mean, I'm sitting here in my office, and you know how I am. At one time, we were up to about 10,000 books, and I enjoy reading, and so here I am with just a small sampling of the books that I've owned in my lifetime, and yet, do I really need all this? I mean, Jesus is saying, really, it's all about me. It's all about the Christ. And, you know, is it really taking all of this? Do I need to spend a lifetime discovering what this simple text actually says? Jesus is saying to this lawyer, it really is this simple. God is not like expecting us to somehow have discovered every little nuance of intricate details of the old law. He really is simply saying, love God, love your neighbor, go do it. And the lawyer can't, he can't believe it. So wanting to justify himself, wanting to say it's not that simple, Jesus, he is a lawyer, he can't help it. So who is my neighbor? It's almost like the lawyer, I don't know if he wants a debate or not, but it's like, well, wait a minute, Jesus, give me more. Give me what it really means. Give me the heart of it. It's like training to be a Jedi Knight, right? We watch Star Wars and there's always that little bit of mysterious mystique to it. It's like, that's a part of the movies, isn't it? It's like, well, you don't know exactly what a Jedi Knight is, but you know it's something special that they go and do with their guru, or whatever they call their master, the master. They go do with their master, right? And we know that's not what Christianity's like. We're not going to like go through an apprenticeship for 20 years and then finally we discover what it means to be a true Christian. And so that is a problem that has been with us from the get-go. Even after Jesus passes on the New Testament through the apostles and the early church begins doing what the early church was doing, it just took very little time before men started saying, oh no, we need a little school off in the desert. And we go there for years and we contemplate and discover what it means to be a true Christian. And can you imagine Jesus saying, read Luke 10. It's all right here. So Jesus said, okay, you want to know who your neighbor is? I mean, you want to make this more complex than it really is? Well, I can't. So let me tell you a story instead. And so, after quoting from Leviticus 18 and telling him, go and do it, and the lawyer's not satisfied, Jesus said, okay, I'll tell you a story. So here it is. Jesus said, a certain man. Again, it's every man, it's no man in particular, but it is a particular man in the story. A certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's always going down from Jerusalem, right? Even if you're at higher elevation from Jerusalem, you go up to Jerusalem because Jerusalem was the place, wasn't it? And so you're going down from Jerusalem, and in this case you really are, as you go down from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And he fell among robbers, and they stripped him, and they beat him, and they went off leaving him half dead. So by chance, a certain priest, again, the way Jesus has told this story, it's amazing. By chance, a certain priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Notice the priest is also going away from Jerusalem. So he's not on the way to the temple to do some type of special temple work or become part of the temple duties that next week. No, he's actually going towards Jericho. And typically when they were going towards Jericho, they're going basically on vacation. They're going down to where the crops grow all year, near the Jordan River. The weather's nice. We're going down to Jericho to take a break. And so I can't be bothered, right? Here's a fellow. Well, let's keep reading. So a certain priest was going down, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side, and likewise also a Levite. And when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But then finally, our hero, a certain Samaritan. Now, it's hard for us to hear this in Jesus' voice because we're not so familiar with the text, of course, with what they were saying in the first century. But here's the way it would typically have been said. The Jews would have said, there are priests, there are Levites, there are Israelites. Priests, Levites, and Israelites. But Jesus, of course, here in the text says, there are priests, there are Levites, and there are Samaritans. Oops. That's a whole different word. And we know all the history in the backdrop, right? The half Jew, half Gentile concept of the Samaritans. And obviously the Jews blame the Samaritans for everything. And so Jesus is basically going to tell this lawyer, why don't you go and act like a Samaritan? And you will take care of what the law says to do. Ah, strange words. But anyway, so why did the priest not get involved? I mean, obviously it cost him more than he was willing to pay. Right? He didn't want to spend the money or take care of the time or go through the effort or whatever. Maybe he would get jumped by robbers too. Who knows what was going through the priest's mind? All we know is he did not get involved. And so Jesus, the master, holds the priest and the Levite guilty for not getting involved. Nothing else. He did not blame them for all the ills of the world or hold them guilty for the sins of the robbers or all the different things that's ever happened. No, it's only about one thing. It's only about what they could do and how they could have helped, and that they didn't take advantage of the opportunity. So when we take this down to our neighbors, our own friends, our own co-workers, what did the lawyer want? The lawyer wants structure. He wants this law with all of these do's and don'ts, and he wants all the boundaries, and he wants structure. He wants a plan, a program. And Jesus said, and this is our first point of this lesson, he said, that's all good. And I gave you the law in the first place, but let me tell you what it's like. I expect you to have spontaneous service. So that's lesson number one. This story is all about the moment when a need is presented and this Samaritan did the thing. He helped out in the situation. So it's all about this spontaneous helping. Galatians 6, towards the end of the book of Galatians here, Paul's going to say in verse 10, so then while we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those who are of the household of the faith. So we do not want to neglect our fellow brothers and sisters, but do good to all while we have opportunity. So again, God doesn't expect us to take care of everybody, but he says take care of somebody as the opportunity avails, right? When you're walking home, when you're driving down the road, when you're at work, when you're at the house, when you come to church, when you hear about a need, it's like this spontaneous type of, it's so simple. Can you imagine this lawyer? He's like, well, no one will get any benefit from that except for the one fellow. That's the point. Nobody's going to pat you on the back. Nobody's going to give you an award. Nobody's going to like, hurrah, you did it. It's just simply an opportunity, and we took advantage and we helped this person. You really just want to ask, how was this lawyer so ignorant? And why was the Samaritan so wise and willing? That's a part of what's going on here. Spontaneous service for others, though. There's a need, and you're capable of doing something about it, then you do it. If you're not capable, right, you can't solve every problem that's out there, then the opportunity's not there, and God doesn't expect you to solve the problem. But you can hear this, the spontaneity and just the willingness on the part of this Samaritan. Having, of course, worked in India and met Mother Teresa and looked at some of the work that was going on there in Calcutta, Mother Teresa would say, here's what it takes for a person to work with the unattractive, the unreasonable, the downcast, the poor, the ill, the on and on the list goes. She said, you just have to see Jesus as the patient. You have to see that it is sweet to serve Jesus Christ. And so you just have to make every person into Jesus. We need to see Jesus in those around us. And so this is the second point. We need to see Jesus everywhere we go. Everything this Samaritan did as the rest of the story unfolded, and he bandaged up his wounds, and he took him on his own beast, took him to an inn, and then gave 2 days' wages to take care of him, and said, whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you. All of that effort that was done was about this fellow's need, and not expecting anything to be paid back. And so Proverbs 3:27, one of my favorite proverbs, it basically says, if you see a need, if there's a need and you have the power to do it, do it. And that's what Jesus is saying. Who's your neighbor? Whoever you have the power to help, then you help. This, look here, I will take care of you, but only if you say thank you. This man couldn't even talk. So that had nothing to do with it. And he's going to leave him at an inn and may never see him again. And so it's all about the opportunity and seeing Jesus in the fellow, right? I guess the third point now, we need to make sure that there's a connection to God. That these opportunities are not just opportunities for horizontal relationship. It wasn't just, okay, I've helped this fellow, but there's also a vertical component, because we want to see that giving, taking advantage of opportunities and helping people is actually a Godward connection. We're doing it in the name of Jesus Christ. And so there's that proclamation, because after all, what does the text say? They will see your good works and they'll glorify your Father who is in heaven. How do they know to do that? Because you've made that vertical connection. And so as we think about this story, what a great text, right? We want to practice spontaneous helping of others. We want to see Jesus in those we help. And finally, number 3, we want to make sure there's a vertical connection. That what we're about, why we're doing this, is not about us. It's not about because I want to help my fellow man, or because I believe in people, or because of any of that. It's all about, no, I believe in God. And I want Jesus to have the glory. Matthew 25, of course, a very spooky text. This text where Jesus is separated, some on his left and some on his right, and the judgment scene is upon us. And here in this text, remember what he does? It's kind of a spooky text, starting in verse 31 through 46. Jesus will separate out, and then he'll tell the ones, he'll say, depart from me, for I was hungry, and you never fed me. And of course, those that have been separated out are going to say, Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you thirsty? If we'd have saw you, we'd have helped you, but we never saw you. And so we never had an opportunity. And Jesus is like, what do you mean? When you helped one of the least, you were helping me. When you were serving those little children, you were serving me. When you were serving, right? And it goes on and on and on. And so this is one of the central elements of judgment that Jesus is going to bring about, is how we saw Christ in the needy. Now, Jesus here is not talking about, he's not talking about matters of doctrine, of correctness of view. He's talking about correctness of the heart. So he's just reminding us, here's the kind of heart I'm looking for. Those undocumented people that live in Longmont? Jesus lives there too, right? That's what he wants us to see. The Spanish-speaking folks who don't know English and have a 3rd grade education? That's where Jesus lives. Lord does not just love the church, though he loves the church. He also loves the whole world and wants every single person to be in the church. So the neighbor, the friend, the postal worker that's so slow over at the post office, the foreign language person, the homeless guy, the corrupt guy, the lost, the poor, the prisoner, all of them need to be in church. And Jesus is saying, that's your neighbors. When you have opportunity, serve them. And do it so that my name is glorified. Such a simple lesson. And how often do we want to take that and turn it into something very complex, like the lawyer? The worst sickness in the world is not cancer, coronavirus, right? It's loneliness, or what I call, and I'm going to make up a word for you, unwantedness. Can you imagine there are people today who are living their lives probably no different than 3 months ago? I mean, for most of us, it's like the world's been turned upside down. We're stuck in our houses. We're using technology. We're creeping out to go to the grocery store with our little mask on. And yet, there are people who've been living in their houses, never getting out, don't know where to go if they did, don't have any relationships, terribly lonely, and that's just the way they've always lived their lives. And you think, wow, that's my neighbor. No one caring, no one wanting to be with them. It's so easy for us to back winners. We love the winner. We even love the underdog when they win, right? But we want them to win. It's like the men's hockey team back in 1980 or whenever it was, when they beat Russia. It's like they were the underdog and we championed them because they won. But what if they would have never made it even to the Olympics? Right? Who wants to back the loser? And so that's where you find Jesus, though. You find Jesus among the losers. And so I'm just wanting you to see in this text that all of us can do something to make our world better today. And Jesus presents us with opportunities all the time. And I have them, you have them, we all have these opportunities to touch someone. And it's where you're at, it's who you come into contact with. And Jesus is saying to us, the religion, whatever, of the Levite and the priest, right? They left people alone and dying. But they're really the ones with the true illness, right? An illness way beyond the bodily affliction of that fellow on that road that day. We can call it elitism or whatever word you want to call it. But we are the church. We as the church, what are we? We are made up of God's people, but what are we? We are the elect, not the elite. And so we want to remember that all are welcome in God's church. And so are you taking advantage of those spontaneous opportunities that come your way? Keep it simple. I think that's really if I could summarize what Jesus had to say to this lawyer, I think this lawyer was looking for something more. He was looking for something, like a big chart that we could diagram everything out. And Jesus is simply saying, it's not that hard. Love God, love your neighbor. Go out and take care of needs. None of us are special on our own. We're only special because of Christ. And so as we take advantage of those opportunities, we connect it vertically to God, and God will receive the glory, and in the end, we'll have loved Jesus himself as we love the unlovable folks all around us. I hope you've enjoyed looking at this text. I certainly do. It's one of those famous chapters in the Bible that, of course, is very rich and yet very simple. And so stay tuned for more lessons as we go through different parts of the Bible over the coming days and weeks. This seems to be the way that we're going to be operating. And so I'll be bringing you more lessons right here from my little black chair in my office. I'm not going anywhere, and so you don't either. And together we'll make it through this. And we're praying for you guys, and I know you guys are praying for us. I have to tell you, it's amazing. It's just amazing. I think just what God will do with this, I look forward to some amazing things in the future. I know that God will use this for his glory, and that we will need to take advantage of some opportunities down the road that he will open up because of what we're experiencing today. And so God bless you as you continue to serve him.